Greetings, everyone. It's a pretty cloud this morning here in southeast Georgia. Sorry I didn't get anything out yesterday. As I said, we were having a outage at our plant, so the main chemical process was down. I got to run a couple things in our programming as tests. That worked well. Got to do some interlock checks. That was monotonous, but hey, it's part of the job, part of the safety there. But yeah, pretty good right now. I'm going to jump into the market placement report.
All right, so a few more weeks of wiggle room for some products before the fully tariff stuff gets to people and companies?
Yeah, that could give some companies additional time to try to blunt the impact on consumer prices, and so far we've seen many of them try to absorb the additional tariff costs that they faced instead of passing it all on to consumers. But that may not last much longer. Procter & Gamble, for example, told investors last week it would start hiking prices on household staples. Walmart has also warned of higher prices, and overall the Yale Budget Lab estimates that Trump's tariffs will shrink American household incomes by about $2,400 on average. That won't be felt equally. Lower income households will take a larger hit to their incomes.
It's a lot of gas and a lot of groceries.
Thank you. S&P and NASDAQ futures are both up in the 7 to 0.8% range, about 2.5 hours here before markets open officially. The key index on the Moscow Stock Exchange is up nearly 5% right now after a Kremlin official confirmed Presidents Putin and Trump will meet in, quote, the coming days. The U.S. president has been setting deadlines for Russia and Ukraine to reach a peaceful solution to the war Russia started and has lately been pushing for new economic penalties on Russia.
Is this going to be another situation of there's a threat from the White House and then Russia shows like a modicum of being willing to negotiate and all the threats just disappear for another couple months?
WhatsApp, owned by Meta Facebook, said this week it has deleted nearly 7 million accounts it says are linked to criminal scam centers. If you have WhatsApp, you'll be familiar with those spams pulling you without asking you to say groups purporting to make you wealthy with cryptocurrencies. Meta says it's coming out with new tools to help users better defend themselves from fraud, and there's new data from Pew Research Center on the near constant attempts to use our devices to swindle us out of money. Marketplace senior economics contributor Chris Farrell's been looking at the data. Hey, Chris.
Good morning, David.
What do you think? I mean, I'm seeing multiple attempted fraud every single day now. The fraudulent call blocker on my mobile phone sometimes has to knock down 8 creepy calls from the same number in rapid succession. Pew's been getting real data. What does it show us?
That your experience is commonplace. 73% of U.S. adults have experienced some kind of online scam or attack.
Older adults can be especially vulnerable, but the fraudsters are happy to swindle any demographic.
This is a truly inclusive part of our economy. They don't care about age, income, education, so on. Everyone is a potential victim.
Truly liberating.
It does highlight that the scams or the group that's most vulnerable is younger and older adults. Pew also found there's no difference between racial and ethnic groups in experiencing online scams, but Black, Hispanic, and Asian adults are more likely to have multiple forms of online frauds happen to them.
How much money are we talking about?
So the FBI says a record $16.6 billion in losses from online scams and other internet crimes last year. And that's an increase of 1/3 from the previous year. But David, the true dollar amount is a lot higher since many online frauds are not reported. Pew says roughly 3/4 of those surveyed who lost money to an online scam did not report the crime to law enforcement. By the way, the most common scams, online hackers making fraudulent charges on credit or debit cards, and that was followed by purchasing an item online that never arrives, or when it arrives is a counterfeit.
All right, and people don't report it because often they're ashamed or they're scared. But
Or they think that the police aren't going to be able to do nothing because, you hear something happening or maybe you have an experience and you try and rely on the police to do something and it feels like nothing does come out of it. So I can understand that. I had a bike stolen when I was a teenager, working at a fast food restaurant. I had my bike stolen. And we made a police report and nothing came out of it. And I mean, I imagine there's a lot of people like that, every day something gets stolen from them, whether, physical, like in my case, or something digitally, like, cash online, credit card numbers, and then that's used to buy things and, make a call and nothing happens. The best thing you can hope for is that, if it's something like a digital asset, the bank is able to pay you back. But for some people, that never does happen.
It turns out, and you've covered this a lot, I know, David, the politics of dividing responsibilities for protecting people really difficult. In the meantime, considering how relentless and pervasive online scammers are, odds are you're going to eventually fall for one.
Well, look, I did not get a spam text during the course of our 3-minute conversation here. Will wonders ever cease? Marketplace's senior economics contributor Chris Farrell in St. Paul. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David.
Our producers are Tamar Fagan, Ariana Rosas, and Erica Soderstrom, our senior.
Yeah, and the spam calls are annoying. I mean, I still get them. Weird ones are, you get a phone call and you're like, well, I guess I'll answer it. And it's just complete silence on the line and then it clicks. So I'm curious if those are just like trying to, recognize like a certain type of voice they're expecting and then they can employ the scam, or if they're just waiting for a voice at all to confirm that, the number is active and then they can try and, bother you, harass you, steal your money, steal your livelihood, all that stuff. So never fun.
Georgia. Officials identified the alleged shooter as Sergeant Cornelius Radford. They say Radford opened fire where he worked, but officials wouldn't speculate about a motive. Southeast Georgia Congressman Buddy Carter told GPB yesterday afternoon he was praying for the injured and their families.
For sure, it's a very tight-knit community. We were just out there last week with the change of command, and anytime anything like this happens, it impacts the whole community, and it impacts our constituents and outside of the base as well.
An Army official says the injured soldiers are stable and expected to recover.
That's good.
The State Board of Education approved the distribution of some delayed federal education grants during a called meeting yesterday. GPB's Sarah Callis reports.
The board authorized the state school superintendent to release the funds to local districts. The money will pay for programs for English language acquisition, support for students who move districts, academic enrichment, and teacher quality improvement.
Good.
Deputy Superintendent Sean Owen says,
Ready and available, and very anxious to get these funds to the districts as quickly as possible.
the grants are typically distributed in early July, ahead of the start of the school year, but replacement reviewed by the Trump administration in June. Now, all has been released to the states. For GPD.
Good. Every dollar that goes to teachers and that helps the schools, helps students, helps our children, and helps our neighbors to make the state better. Because if you don't give that money to kids through good education, they're going to have worse outcomes in life, which means your neighborhoods are not going to be as comfortable as you want them to be.
News reports this follows a trip by Trump's special envoy to Russia.
President Trump says that his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has had what he called a highly productive meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
He did not give specifics for a future meeting. He was careful to temper expectations, declining, for example, to call this a breakthrough.
I've been disappointed before with this one.
Trump is threatening Russia with heavy sanctions if Moscow doesn't agree to a peace deal with Ukraine in the coming days. Trump has been increasingly frustrated with Putin for not ending the war sooner. Franco, Ordonez, NPR News.
President Trump has imposed tariffs on dozens of countries overnight. The U.S. had been charging a 10% tax on much of what we import over the last 4 months. That's now gone to 15% on goods from the European Union, Japan, and South Korea.
What?
Other countries are paying higher rates, including Brazil. It's facing a 50% tariff that will affect Brazilian coffee and beef, goods that are popular with Americans. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro.
It's funny because we sell more to Brazil than we buy from Brazil.
The tariffs will help pay for the tax cuts in the big beautiful bill. The tariffs will help debt reduction.
But some economists are worried the tariffs will mean higher prices for Americans. Some are concerned Americans will lose jobs. Others say some tariffs are being challenged in federal court. Environmental groups are asking a federal judge to stop operations at an immigration detention facility in Florida Everglades. In a hearing yesterday, the groups said the facility may be hurting some endangered species, such as the Florida panther. NPR's Greg Allen has more.
There are somewhere between 120 and 230 panthers remaining in Florida. The Immigration Detention Center, dubbed Alligator Alcatraz by federal and state officials, is in the heart of the panther's habitat. Randy Couch, who helped write a panther recovery plan for the state, said the bright lights and increased human presence will push panthers out of an area that encompasses about 2,000 acres. Cross-examined by a lawyer for the state, Couch agreed that the current panther habitat is stable, but the area affected is a small part of the 3 million acres that comprise their total habitat. Even so, Couch said the habitat loss will contribute to the harm of the panther population.
That and then the roads coming in and out, the traffic going in and out, any type of airspace that they need to use, it's going to have an impact on the local wildlife. I mean, the Everglades is absolutely beautiful and is one of like the only really natural refuges left in Florida that is not, touched or molested by human presence, and we're doing it in like the dumbest way possible right now.
Authorities at Fort Stewart, Georgia, say 5 soldiers who were shot yesterday are expected to recover. Base officials say the soldier accused of shooting them was identified as a co-worker. They're still investigating the motive for the shooting. The Walt Disney Company is making changes to its streaming services. NPR's Netta Ulaby reports Disney has decided it no longer needs Hulu as a standalone app.
You might use the Hulu app to watch shows like The Bear, Abbott Elementary, or The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, one of its biggest hits.
Miranda is Taylor's ex-best friend. I'm going to set the record straight on this main scandal.
Disney has decided to roll all of its Hulu shows onto the Disney Plus app next year to, quote, unify the brand. On a Wednesday earnings call, Disney Store promised this will improve things for consumers, and also Disney's ad sales. As well as Hulu, Disney also owns ABC, FX Networks, and ESPN. A new ESPN streaming service is scheduled to launch later this month after announcing new partnerships with the NFL and the WWE.
They already have their own streaming already. Why do they need a new one?
Support for NPR
What kind of stock market or stockholder play is this? Shareholder. That's what I'm looking for. Shareholder play. It's so silly.
allows them to thrive. Information about ways to prevent and solve homelessness is at melvilletrust.org.
I'm Bert Wesley. You may have heard that recently Congress voted to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and this means more than $1 billion has been rescinded from public radio stations across the country, effective immediately. Here at GPB, that represents millions of dollars we were counting on to bring you NPR, as well as unique Georgia stories from right here in our own newsroom. Now's the time to join with us and support public media. Make your gift today at gpb.org.
This is Morning Edition on GPB. I'm Pamela Kirkland. Thank you for starting your morning with me and GPB. Coming up on the program, Hamilton creator Lin-Manuel Miranda talks with NPR's Steve Inskeep about a lesser-known song in the musical that depicts a meeting of President George Washington's advisors. We'll have that coming up in about 15 minutes on Morning Edition right here on GPB. It's Thursday, August 7th.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, we've been collecting your questions about Trump and the courts, and many of
All right, we're gonna cut it there for the day, just so I can get it in the time frame that I'm trying to aim for right now. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, no, that last little bit was just whatever, filler stuff. But the rescission stuff, man, it still gets me pretty angry. And it really just makes me think like, they're trying to chop all this stuff up and just get rid of it because it is a source of antagonism towards the current administration. And what's really annoying about it is how much NPR and here in the state of Georgia GPB really does try to talk to both sides of our political duopoly, even though they're really a lot closer to each other than they like to make themselves seem. But I mean, when the threats first started to come, I noticed that they really ramped up on how many Republican state and federal representatives they were talking to. I mean, they had heads from the Heritage Foundation coming on at least once a week. It felt like, or organizations similar to Heritage, and it was for nothing, because it's just how it is. You just fight, and you don't back down. I mean, that's a winning strategy, and that's what these authoritarians really show. And it's what us who want progress in our country, in our state, in our cities actually need to do. Fight. We need to compromise when it makes sense. But if we know that the other side is just going to vote no matter what on making your life better, if they're going to at every moment make a bad faith argument, then they're not worth dealing with. Then you have to take things into your own hands and use the system as best you can to make their lives miserable, because they want to use the system to make everyone's lives miserable. So that's how I see it on that. And then a quick note on the release of funding to Georgia schools. It's a really great thing. It was reported sometime last month or the month before that Georgia, the state of Georgia, is allowing retired teachers to come back into the classroom with some incentives. So as a short stopgap measure for the lack of teachers that we have, really we have a teaching crisis here in the state of Georgia and across the nation for that matter. We don't have enough teachers. And it's good to see that there is some funding going to the schools when we are crippled. But it's not enough. We need to see more funding, not just for the teachers that are in the schools right now or trying to get people back who did teach and are now 70. We need to work on the teachers who are currently 16, 17, 18 years old, juniors in high school that have a proclivity to teaching, freshmen in college that want to get in their communities and make their cities better, that want to raise the next generation of thinking Americans. That's where we really should be putting our efforts for. We're too short term with our goals when it comes to education, unfortunately. We really need to push on making the next generation of teachers, because that'll last 40 years, not bringing a senior citizen back in for another 6 months. So I'll leave there. I hope you all have a good one and a wonderful Thursday.